Oh, it's never a good time, obviously, to be diagnosed with cancer. But I had pretty decent jobs most of my life, permanent employment with all the benefits, etc.
Yeah.
And then, as the moment I was diagnosed, I was just in between jobs and had zero income, zero benefits, zero insurance, zero. So absolutely horrendous timings.
Hello, my name's Charlie, the founder of LivedInsights, and welcome to the LivedInsights Podcast. We're going to be having conversations with many different people on many different topics to get their insights, their experiences, their knowledge, their wisdom to help other people. Please tell friends, tell family, tell colleagues, and without further ado, let's crack on with this episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the LivedInsights Podcast. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about cancer. And our guest today is Louisa. So firstly, welcome Louisa. Thanks for coming in. Obviously, not a topic that we want to be discussing, but sadly, it affects so many people of all ages as well. And I want to talk about your journey and the good, the bad, what you're doing now, all this, everything basically. So would you mind telling us about how you, before the diagnosis, were there symptoms? What were the, why did you go and get yourself checked and where did it go from there?
Sure, thanks for having me. So I don't really think I had too many symptoms, apart from the kind of classic, if you can call it that, lump in one of my breasts.
Mm-hmm. And did you just noticed it one day? And
yes,
okay.
Yes. I just, I wasn't frequently checking myself, probably should have done, more so. And I thought perhaps it was more due to monthly period cycles, things change in the body. Mm-hmm. But then I noticed there was a particular lump that wasn't really going away.
Okay. Maybe
it was getting a bit bigger.
Okay.
So I thought, I better just go to the GP and get it checked out. Mm-hmm. And my GP sent me to get a biopsy. All that happened very quickly. So I had a biopsy, and then I think 2 weeks after had results that came back, unfortunately, that it was cancer. And then from there, at that point, we didn't know exactly the prognosis or anything.
So the good news was that you acted upon finding a lump, and then it was fairly quick to then get a biopsy done. And were you scared at this point? Were you very concerned, or were you okay, I'm sure it'll be something not sinister?
I think I had a feeling there was something not quite right.
Okay.
So I was preparing myself for the worst.
Right.
Or my intuition said, I think it's going to come back.
Did you tell anybody?
To be honest, I can't really remember. I probably didn't tell too many people until I knew exactly what was going on.
Okay. And then when you were actually told the diagnosis, you were expecting it, but...
I was expecting it, but
still
obviously also hoping that it wasn't.
Okay.
So, and then to be told in a very dingy, dark, grey room, the size of a hospital cupboard, it wasn't particularly... my partner had nowhere to sit at the time.
Okay.
He sat on the patient's bed. I was sat on the patient's chair.
And
it was just
when was this?
That was in April 2017.
Okay.
Yes, so definitely remember parts of it. Probably don't remember accurately because of the shock.
Yeah.
So even if I was thinking probably is something not right, I didn't want to hear those words.
Sure.
That it's cancer.
And then can you remember the events from that point? Yeah, you had this diagnosis, massive shock. Nobody wants to hear that. But then what was set in place?
Do you know one thing I think I remember is getting taken into a different room by a Macmillan nurse or another nurse. been given lots of leaflets. Obviously very overwhelmed at that point, and a bit of an out-of-body experience, which I think sometimes it still can be. Is this really happening to me?
Yeah.
And at that point, nobody knew, because it was still just the biopsy then. I hadn't had any scans yet. So I think I was explained, okay, so now you'll be
going through
various scans, to see and go from there. But I think the mind, the whirlwind of emotions and thoughts.
Yeah.
You know.
And was this in Nottingham?
No, so I was living in London at the time.
Oh, okay.
So at Guy's Cancer Centre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you then had the scans, and what were the results of those?
So yeah, unfortunately, the scans showed that it had already spread to my liver, and I had multiple liver metastases, as they're called. So initially I was thinking, okay, hopefully it's just in the breast and it's primary, and hopefully it's caught early. That wasn't to be the case. So it had already spread, quite advanced, stage 4. So that obviously complete. It's like a second shockwave.
Did you know anything about cancer before this? Because if someone doesn't know anything about cancer and they just get told certain things, it's like it might not really mean anything because you don't know. Or was it explained fully about the situation? What was your situation?
I'm trying to. So I knew a little bit about cancer, but not necessarily breast cancer. I knew about it because there's more awareness about breast cancer perhaps than other cancers.
Yeah.
Although there are, I think, 57 types of breast cancer or something. That might be wrong, but there's lots of different types of breast cancer.
Well, I think for one of the things I've learnt with cancer, and what you obviously learned, is there's so many different types of cancer. So, I mean, cancer's the one word used generically for hundreds and hundreds of different types of cancer.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I wasn't aware there was that many different types of breast cancer, but yeah. So
I think, just in case I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did know about other cancers. My dad unfortunately died of malignant melanoma, so he had cancer for 8 years before he passed away. And I was diagnosed a few years later. So I knew a bit about cancer. But I know cancer's complicated.
Sure.
So yeah.
So when they told you stage 4, it had metastasized, and it was particularly present in your liver, presumably your reaction there was, well, this is it. You know, there's no coming back from this. How was that? You know, how did they explain it to you? Because I mean, no matter what form of cancer, it's very easy. So like in my case, other people's cases, you hear the word cancer, automatically, that's it. And that's very often not the case. But when you hear a stage 4 diagnosis, that almost definitely is the case. Even though I think, again, what I've learned, you've learned, stage 4, terminal, whatever you want to call it, is not necessarily what you think, i.e. people live for decades and decades and decades.
Exactly, touch wood.
Yeah. Exactly.
I remember, so I try and remember the nuggets of information that I hear that I want to keep hold of, and maybe some of the more negative stuff.
Buried.
And I remember one nurse saying, it's incurable but treatable.
Okay.
And think of it more like a chronic illness. And so that was in 2017, so almost 8 years ago. And I remember holding on to that because I was like, oh, well, I've lived with asthma. That's a chronic illness.
Okay.
So maybe I can live with this.
So there was,
hopefully,
there was hope, and there was something you could hold on to, something positive.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I imagine that a lot of people might have heard that, but wouldn't have taken that in. You know, it would have just gone over their head. So that's interesting. And so you were able to hold on to that.
There might have been other stuff that went over my head.
Okay.
But I've tried to hold on to that.
Yeah. And did they quite quickly talk about next stages? what could be done, what they were going to try, how they were going to treat it?
Yes. So very quickly started 6 cycles of EC chemo. I can't remember the long, complicated word. It's also known as the Red Devil. Okay. It's not pleasant.
This is another thing. There's so many different types of chemo.
Yeah.
So, okay, 6 cycles. Was that weekly?
Every 3 weeks.
Every 3 weeks.
It's quite a brutal chemotherapy. So it's every 3 weeks. And yeah, horrible side effects. Hair loss. I did wear the cold cap, which wasn't pleasant at all, but I tried to stick with it.
Just if you don't mind, for those that don't know what that entails, how that feels like, can you just explain
the cold cap?
Yeah, the cold cap.
So again, it was a long time ago, but it's this cap that's basically freezes your scalp and your hair follicles. I can't remember what minus temperature it is. And you sit with it for longer than you have the chemotherapy. It goes on before and stays on after. So, but it numbs your head. It can make you feel it's nauseating. It's not very nice. I used to watch a bit of ab fab on my iPad to first 10 minutes. If you can get through the first 10 minutes,
you can
usually
get rid. Okay,
can handle it.
And the idea behind it is that your hair will grow back.
Well, it prevents the hair loss, so hopefully you actually don't completely lose all your hair.
Okay.
I did still lose my hair, not all of it. I probably maintained 30-40% of it. I still wore hats all the time, but it definitely thinned. There was a time when I remember a nurse saying, just forget about the cold cap, just forget about it. Yeah. I was like, no, I'm going to stick with it. And I did. So I didn't lose my hair completely. But yeah, still having the clumps of hair coming out. And I tried and tested some wigs, but yeah, it wasn't. And now whenever I have mint shampoo, which I hardly ever do unless by accident in a hairdresser, that mint is that cooling effect on the scalp. And that brings back, some memories.
So, other than the cool cap, the side effects of the chemo for you, were they pretty unpleasant, bearable? What do you remember about? Was it more the sickness?
Yeah, I think the sickness, the fatigue, like another level. So, I mean, I'd pretty much be just sofa bound, resting after to recuperate, because it just completely floored me.
And you said you had 6 rounds, 3 weeks apart, which 18 weeks, which is getting on for 4 months.
Yeah.
Where you couldn't really do much, going through the treatment, recovering, and before you know it, you're back in again. And I mean, I know the answer to this, but it's probably quite a significant aspect. You weren't working at the time, so we might come on to this later, or we might just discuss it now. Everyone's situation is different, whether it's their support network, their friends, family, their age, but also their working. For me, I was self-employed, had a business to try to navigate and run while going through my treatment. Yourself, you were not working at the time, so you didn't have any income coming in, you didn't have a company supporting you, etc. So how did that affect you, or how much of a factor was that in your situation?
Oh, it's never a good time, obviously, to be diagnosed with cancer. But I had pretty decent jobs most of my life, permanent employment with all the benefits, etc. Yeah. And then, as the moment I was diagnosed, I was just in between jobs and had 0 income, 0 benefits, 0 insurance, 0. So absolutely horrendous timing. So the additional stress, financial stress. Yeah.
did you try not to worry about that, think about that?
I tried. It's difficult, and I felt guilty because luckily I have a very supportive partner, and so in one respect, perhaps the timing, because I didn't have a job, so I could just focus 100% on relaxing and healing, so I didn't have the work stress. But at the same time, I lost complete independence and didn't have any money coming in for the first time in my working life, which I think cancer can affect your confidence in the early days, have a big impact on confidence, but then also your financial independence and lack of routine, work, purpose, etc. also reduces your confidence. So double whammy.
Okay. And so there was the financial effect, there was I guess not having the additional potential support and security, and then what are you going to do going forward? So you had several months of the chemo treatment, and then was that a case of then having additional scans to see if that helped? What had happened from that? So then you had scans and had to wait for those results. Yeah.
Yes.
So what was the outcome of?
I think I had a scan also halfway during the EC chemo just to make sure it was actually probably working and doing something, which luckily it was. And then completed the treatment of chemotherapy, and then because it's stage 4 incurable, things were shrinking and stable, so it was going in the right direction. But then after that treatment, immediately started hormone therapy and an oral chemotherapy, like a chemo tablet.
Right. Okay.
And I was on that for 5.5 years.
Okay.
But yes, always scans every 3 months for the first few years. And then now I'm having scans every 6 months.
Okay. So it's 2017, April, did you? Yeah. So then during 2017, the chemo scans, good news were it was having an effect. They were shrinking. They couldn't see any further spread. How were you feeling at this point? Were you starting to feel optimistic? Were you, happy that this was seemingly working, or were you still like, this is, I've got stage 4 cancer here?
Yeah, I think I was obviously pleased that the results were going in a positive direction. Still extremely hopeful, but also extremely scared at the same time. I think I was scared and hopeful at the same time, if that's possible.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, it'd be hard for anybody who's not been in your situation to fully be able to understand or appreciate what it must be like. But yeah, dealing with so your mental health, how you're dealing with it, being hopeful and scared, the physical effects of the treatment not working, all those factors. And I don't know if this is is relevant, but the effects of the treatment are going to have additional effects, i.e. not going to be able to have children, other longer term side effects, potentially like then having to have hormone replacement therapy as a result of everything. So a lot more than I guess anyone would ever consider.
Yeah.
So how were you able to deal with that? I mean, you said you had a very supportive partner, friends, family, yourself. How did you deal with it?
I don't really know. I think still dealing with it. I think you can never unhear the words, it's cancer. You can never unhear or unsay, if you can say it like that.
Yeah.
So
it's always there.
It's always there. Yeah. obviously it's a traumatic life event.
Did you, for example, talk in detail to your partner, your family, your friends? Was that a big part of it, or did you get professional help, counselling? Did you have particular techniques, tools that you use? Because it's almost how can you possibly deal with it without completely losing the plot?
Yeah, no, totally. And I have seen a number of different professional kind of therapists. Some were better than others. Spoke to my partner a lot. And some of my closer friends. I think the whole thing about having kids, I think I assumed at the start that there'd be time to freeze some eggs or something, which I think if you have primary breast cancer, sometimes that
option
is an option. And I remember asking my oncologist, and it was like, there's no time, there's no point, almost.
Okay.
Yeah, but there wasn't much conversation after that with the medical team.
Okay.
That's something difficult to process. And I think just like having cancer itself or losing a parent, like I lost my dad to cancer, just the whole grief thing, it's like another element of grief, not grieving a life that you thought you were going to have. Yeah. Suddenly you're thrown into
were you aware of that? Did you grieve? Did you process that?
I have, but I think that takes years. Maybe forever.
Like a death.
Yeah, exactly. Or acceptance, which is like a stage of grief and healing. Acceptance, I think, is one of the hardest things to reach or to feel. So I think some days I have moments where
why has this happened to me?
Yeah, and some days, we've got a dog now. Like I'm quite happy with my life right now, despite the traumatic events and not looking.
Is that then perhaps a slight element of gratitude, appreciation of life? Because essentially back in 2017 it was kind of a death sentence. Yet you're still here, you are living, and is there an element of appreciating life a bit more?
I don't know if that's how you feel, but I think I definitely feel more appreciation for little things. And there are all these quotes about it's the little things that matter, but I think I'm really more appreciative, or notice the little things and the meaningfulness in things.
I hope you're finding this episode interesting, informative and beneficial. And if so, please like, comment, subscribe, follow, and keep watching and listening to future episodes. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your colleagues. Also, if you can, go to the LivedInsights.com website and fill in an online questionnaire. You'll be helping so many other people understand more about these different topics and issues. So remember, tune in to Lived Insights, the conversation, and the website. Thank you. Yeah, in my case, I kind of have a little bit of a battle with myself at times because there's part of me that is, you've got to appreciate things more and do more of what you enjoy and all these sorts of things. And then there's a part of me that I don't have time. I've got to do this, I've got to do that, because life's so short and I've got to get on with stuff and make things happen. And I want to do this, I want to do that. And then you sort of feel guilty about, well, no, you should appreciate what you've got. And I don't know, it's a real mix. I haven't found the right balance yet. I'm still work in progress. But yeah, there is still definitely an element of, it makes you think a lot more about life and everything else. And so yeah, it's interesting because one of my big things is trying to take positives out of any situation. So in your situation, you just mentioned some positives and things, but at the same time, I can just imagine how, at times you can't be positive all the time.
No.
So
batteries have both sides, negative and a positive, right? We need a bit of both. We need to offload the negative, and have some space for positive and the gratitude. Like, I definitely practice more gratitude. I'm not sure how much I practiced before, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've speaking to other people, it's for many people, they never have an event in their life where suddenly and there's that realization that life is short. You need to be more thankful. You need to have the gratitude. You need to just realize that at any moment it can just go. So, stop wasting time, or stop procrastinating about this, or stop whatever it is, or go and do something. And other people have it very early in their life.
It's a shame we have to go through something traumatic to appreciate these little things.
I mean, we take life far too much for granted. So you talked about you had your partner, friends, family, you've had therapy, counselling, whatever you want to do. Presumably you've also come up with your own methods, your own way of dealing with it, processing it. You talked about the grieving, all the elements to your situation. And is there anything particular that you've been surprised about, or would really think, wow, this is really helpful for me?
So I can talk about breathing a lot.
Yeah.
Actually, no, you don't want to breathe a lot. You want to breathe less. But so prior to my cancer diagnosis, I think I mentioned briefly about having asthma, which is a chronic illness. So I had this breathing problem before having cancer. And it sounds crazy now, I think, but I think I only took my breath really seriously after my cancer diagnosis, despite having many problems with my breathing from a child. Because then when I got diagnosed, I thought, well, I don't actually know now how many more breaths I have to go. I didn't know. And I did qualify as a yoga teacher, I think a year before my cancer diagnosis. So I went to India, and part of yoga is pranayama, which is certain breathing. But I think it's in the yogic tradition or yogic culture that we're all put here for a certain number of breaths. So that's one traditional belief system. And so I started to explore breathwork. It's a popular term these days, breathwork. But I was more interested, there's lots of different types of breathwork now, but I had a breathing dysfunction with asthma. And no one told me how to breathe properly, which also seems a bit bizarre. If you have a breathing problem, you're not actually told what the basics of healthy functional breathing are. So I started delving into that, reading books, going on courses. So as well as getting support from friends, family and professionals, slowly started to retrain. So during chemotherapy, I actually would, when I was feeling horrendous with all the horrible side effects, would just listen on YouTube to yoga nidras. So yoga nidra is the sleep of the yogis. Don't know if you've heard of that. It's just a deep guided relaxation, essentially. So you're just relaxing, lying down, any comfortable position. And it's to tap into the parasympathetic nervous system, the healing kind of part of your nervous system. So I started doing yoga nidra, and then a week or 2 weeks after my EC chemo finished, I went to train as a yoga nidra teacher in the first instance in Bermondsey, just down the road from the cancer centre. There's a Buddhist centre. I used to live
in Bermondsey.
Did you?
Yeah. Oh. My first house was in Bermondsey.
No way.
Yeah. Jamaica Road.
Oh, right.
Bermondsey. Anyway,
So
near Tower Bridge.
Did you know that? Yeah, there's a Buddhist centre around there.
Okay, that was a long time ago, but
there's this there's some green space, but I did the yoga nidra, my initial training, for a weekend 2 weeks after my chemo finished, and I felt incredible. But it's 2 days of relaxation, which we don't often do. And obviously, even prior to cancer, I don't think I was that great at relaxing. But if we're going through something traumatic, which puts a lot of stress on the body, and tension and tightness.
And did you pursue that just because you found it interesting, and something to look at going through treatment, and something you'd sort of looked at, explored a little bit before, but it was interesting? Or did you pursue it in relation to the cancer, i.e., this could be really beneficial, this could be really helpful, this is going to help me?
Yeah, probably a bit of both, but I think I was in survival mode. I was like, I don't want to die.
Okay.
So,
what am I going to do
what can I do to help myself? Hopefully, live as long as possible, living with it, or whatever could happen, open to possibilities. Even though, they say it's incurable, or what if we can do something to help? And then the things that I read about, it kind of made sense to tap into more of the parasympathetic, because I was living more in the sympathetic nervous system zone.
Okay.
And that affects our breathing, how we feel. If we're more relaxed, our breathing's more relaxed. If we're more stressed, the sympathetic nervous system, our breathing's more shallow, more shorter, it's more dysfunctional. So for many years with asthma, I was breathing in a dysfunctional way. I think there is some studies out there about 37% of asthmatics can go on. It doesn't mean they do, but can go on to get cancer. So my dad was an asthmatic as well. I have asthma. I met lots of people now with asthma and cancer. But it's a lack of oxygen at the cellular level. So breathwork that I don't do is stuff that increases hypoxic environments. So hypoxia is a lack of oxygen in the tissues and the cells. I want to increase oxygen uptake in the body. Again, there's some study about cancer cannot thrive in a well oxygenated environment. So if you can breathe in a functional, healthy way day to day, where you're optimizing oxygen uptake, hopefully that will make a positive impact. It hasn't done me any harm. So it's improved my asthma greatly. Lung health and lung capacity has been linked to longevity. So
it's interesting, because I suspect anyone watching, listening to this, there's probably more people with asthma than cancer. And I've never had asthma, but I can imagine that most people with asthma, they get given the inhalers, but don't get told about breath work.
Exactly. That's what exactly like me. Here's some steroids, inhaler. I had a nebulizer growing up when I was a child, because I was really bad asthmatic. But yeah, no one tells you how to breathe properly.
And I'm aware that in recent years there's been more focus on breath work, and some of the influencers on YouTube and certain people have really gone and brought breath work to the forefront. But the only thing I've ever known about is how, and I might be wrong here, but you should breathe through your nose, because the whole point of your nasal hair is to filter out air, but that's more probably from in terms of pollution as opposed to techniques. So it's not something, given that clearly everyone breathes is a big part of living.
Yes, exactly.
No one ever talks about it, discusses it, how much a difference it can make, the right ways, the wrong ways, all of this. So it's very intriguing. And tell me more, because I suspect most people don't really know much about breathing. I mean, I do know that, for example, to try and relax yourself or calm yourself down, or the thing with people with panic attacks is, you try and deep breaths in and slow you down. And I know that, I'm over the years, for different reasons, I wouldn't say fixated, but I spend a lot of time measuring my heart rate and resting heart rate and all of that. And I know if I want to bring my heart rate down, I can use breathing to do that and relax. Yeah. So, yeah, tell me more about the breathing, both in relation to the cancer, but then also your business that you've set up as a result of your interest and not having a job. Therefore, what were you going to do? So, yeah.
Gosh, how long have you got? I can talk a lot about breathing. But yes, it is something we do naturally that we don't think about. It's automatic. Mm-hmm. Good job, because often we're too busy to think about breathing. But yeah, we know it's important to stay hydrated. We know, people carry around really large water bottles these days. We know it's important to stay hydrated. We know it's important to have a healthy, balanced diet. But we seem to overlook breathing completely, whereas we can't live without the breath for more than a few minutes unless we're expert breath holders, free divers, which I'm not. But breathing is something we just take for granted, unless those who've had respiratory problems or asthma attacks, and when you're really breathless, and some cancer treatment can cause shortness of breath. Okay. So certain chemotherapies can cause breathlessness. Okay. So that's going to exacerbate potentially feelings of anxiety and stress and fatigue, because we don't think about oxygen as an energy source. We think about protein or certain. I'm not a runner or anything, but athletes that do the marathons, they'll have some sugar and fuel. Yep. But if you look at some of the athletes, professional marathon runners, often are nasal breathers as well. Horses are obligate nasal breathers. Horses are some of the fastest runners in the world. Horses breathe through the nose when they're running. Now, this takes a lot of practice if you are a runner and you want to breathe in and out your nose. If you're into fitness and stuff, you'd have to do things gradually. But the nose performs 30 functions of the body, which I won't go into all of them now. But yes, one of them filters the air. So I had bad hay fever growing up. I had chest infections every year, which is a classic for asthmatics. I call myself a recovering mouth breather. Okay. So I would mouth breathe all the time. Yeah. Day and probably night. And that's very common with asthmatics. When we mouth breathe, our tongue is also collapsed in the mouth. So it would be like a lazy tongue, if you like. Okay. Whereas the nose actually activates the diaphragm. Yeah. The mouth doesn't. The mouth often activates the upper respiratory system, which creates more of a short, shallow breath. Okay. The nose, because it activates the diaphragm, will create a more functional breath. And we want to breathe low. So 70% of toxins are released through the breath. 70%. Okay. So again, we think about detoxes, juicing and but 70% is through.
It's interesting. I've just reminded me of something, because there's something a few years ago I came across, and I found it interesting because I thought, I bet hardly anyone gets this right. And the question was, in terms of when people lose weight, where does that, if they lose fat, where does that fat go? And the four answers were, is it through your urine? Is it through your poo? Is it through sweat? Or is it through breathing? And I think most people would say, I think a lot of people say sweat, then people go, oh no, maybe it's through your poo and that. Literally no one says breathing. Yeah, I think it's like 85% of fat loss through the body is out through the mouth. I just thought of that, and it's crazy because no one knows that, or hardly anyone. I'm now sitting here breathing through my nose, so it is definitely
well, it's hard when you're sure to talking.
Well, yeah, but so that's because you get these people who take their mouth up at night. Yeah. So the main thing that people should be doing is breathing through the nose rather than the
some
mouth.
of the top 3 breathing basics, healthy functional breathing, is breathing in and out the nose for a multitude of reasons. Also, what people often, if they mouth breathe, it's dehydrates the body. We lose also a lot of hydration when we mouth breathe. Okay. So we want to breathe in and out the nose for a number of reasons, but also we produce something called nitric oxide in the nasal cavities behind the scenes. So 30% of the nose is visible out here, but 70% is behind the scenes. Okay. And we produce something called nitric oxide, which is a magical molecule that's won an award apparently many moons ago. But it's a molecule that's really important for our well-being. Okay. And it's a vasodilator. It helps to dilate our blood vessels. So it's good for our circulation. And if we have good circulation, the blood flow is carrying the oxygen, the nutrients around the body. But if we don't produce nitric oxide, or if we're not relaxed, if we're tense or tight or mouth breathe, the body's going to have to work a lot harder for that blood to flow around the body, for that oxygen to reach areas that we want it to reach more efficiently. But yes, nose breathing, day and night, which is difficult. You don't have to use mouth tape. You can use nasal strips. Okay. The tongue posture is important. The tongue should rest at the roof of the mouth. So if you...
Just normally? Or just normally.
So see, when we're talking, the mouth is for talking, eating, laughing, singing, all these things. But when we're breathing at rest, the tongue should rest at the roof of the mouth. The roof of the mouth is connected to our parasympathetic nervous system as well. But we also produce saliva in the mouth. Okay. If we're not producing saliva in the mouth because the mouth is dry, that affects our oral microbiome and it affects our gut microbiome. There's a lot of talk about gut health, but where does gut health start? In the mouth. That's the first entry point for food, is in the mouth. And if we have a dry mouth, we won't have the enzymes to take it down into the gut. But also, saliva contains a natural painkiller stronger than morphine. So people also who have a lot of pain issues may often be mouth breathing. They don't produce saliva, and you want to be digesting that saliva because it contains a natural painkiller.
Okay, I didn't know, because one of the side effects of my cancer treatment is dry mouth. I still have it, 3 years on from my first treatment, dry mouth. I mean, it's better than it was, but it's still dry mouth. And no one's ever mentioned anything like this to me. The only thing is I have a special extra fluoride toothpaste because of the less of saliva. It's good for your teeth. So I've never been mentioned before. So yeah, maybe I need to.
I can tell you. I can show you now if you want to. You can stimulate or try to stimulate a bit of saliva.
I do know by licking my inside of my
if you roll the tongue
and
around
all of that
the
stuff.
mouth.
And I mean I chew gum to help stimulate. I have water with me all the time. But in terms of the pain relief, that I've never heard about that, and I've got a lot of pain in places. So that's interesting. So I'll definitely investigate more about that, but it's something that's never been mentioned at all.
No, I mean, there's lots of things you learn along the way, right? Like I said, I had this breathing problem. I've learnt so much. So after the yoga nidra training, I trained in various breathing techniques, breathing schools, mainly those that are kind of doctor-led. Like I said, there's lots of breath work these days. I don't tend to do the popular stuff, the hyperventilation breathing techniques. Okay. I kind of stay away from those. Okay. So again, people can try whatever techniques they want. But because I was probably a habitual hyperventilator growing up, because asthma is a hyperventilating breath where I'm breathing too much and it's mouth breathing. So I needed to do something different.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
And I wanted to restore healthy, functional breathing.
Yeah. So you mentioned there was the three key ones. So the breathing through the nose.
Breathing basics, in and out the nose. Yep. The tongue posture, should rest at the roof of the mouth. And then diaphragmatic. I think people talk about belly breathing, but actually also I like to talk about horizontal breathing. So we breathe to expand to the sides, but also breathe to the back of the body. So actually 360 breathing, because your lungs are also at the back of the body. So we want to make sure we're breathing using the whole body, not just one area, but front, sides and back. And a number of reasons for this, but even lower back pain has been linked to dysfunctional breathing because we're not moving the diaphragm properly.
And is that important to take full breaths? Like, because I think
slow breaths are better than deep breaths. Take a deep breath actually isn't that good advice.
Okay.
Because you tend to take a deep breath and then you've actually hyperventilated a little bit.
Okay.
Actually, exhaling first is often a better advice because as an asthmatic, or if you're stressed and anxious, you're kind of worrying about a breath in. So someone says, take a deep breath. I was like, well, I'm trying, but I can't because I'm struggling. But if you exhale, so there's a number of different techniques where you exhale properly. So exhale completely first, then you've made space for an inhalation. You can then take a fuller, a more complete breath in. So, but until we've exhaled properly, we can't take a proper inhalation. So, but take a deep breath. You don't know where your starting point is then, and it might be a quick breath, which actually a slow breathing. So maybe there's more than 3 breathing basics, to be honest. Slow breathing. There's an optimal breathing pace. Our optimal breathing pace is 5 to 6 breaths per minute. Okay. So that's 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out.
I'm just thinking of, I don't know, if, my Fitbit as one of the metrics is breathing rate. I'm pretty sure. I think it's usually about 15. Is that
at rest?
I think it's average during the day. I don't know, to be honest. It's not one of the ones I don't really understand. What does that mean? 15, 16?
If it's saying 15 breaths per minute, you want it. So if you think that's what it's showing you.
Is that fast, slow?
It's fast, yeah. So if you want to be 5 to so slowing the breath down.
Okay.
Increases oxygen uptake.
Okay.
So fast breathing, we're often offloading too much CO2, oxygen. A faster breath. Every breath, so the diaphragm linked to the lower ribs, the heart rests above the diaphragm. We breathe around 25,000 times a day. And there's something called the vagus nerve, which lots of people know about, but there's also something called the phrenic nerve. And phren in Greek means mind. So the phrenic nerve that connects from the diaphragm to the back of the brainstem, it's moving every time we're breathing. So if we're breathing fast, it's sending signals. A fast breath is like, oh, are we in danger here?
Yeah.
Maybe not. We don't have lions, tigers and bears around the corner here.
So it's a bit similar to the whole cortisol issue, where that's there for a reason when you need it, i.e. the tiger is about to chase you, but it gets activated all the time in our modern life and our stressful life, and it's not doing us any good.
Exactly.
So it sounds like a similar
so cortisol levels as well. Mine were probably way too high for too long, but we have a natural cortisol spike in the morning to get up out of bed, take action to go to work. But if we are in a constant high state of alert, high state of sympathetic nervous system arousal, that fight and flight, cortisol, that's not sustainable. Like driving a car at 100 miles an hour, at some point the petrol's going to run out.
Yeah.
And
or you can hit some traffic lights or whatever.
But you need a service and MOT.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable to drive at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. Okay.
Forever.
Okay.
So we also have to take time out.
So your business, did you just sort of gradually start to research, gain knowledge, and then start to offer that as a service, workshops and stuff? I mean, how did you build that business up?
Yeah, slowly and gradually. So my business is called Breathe, Balance, Be. Breathe, breath comes first. Can't do anything without it. Balance, I needed some more. I don't think my life was very well balanced prior to cancer. Also, a balanced breath is one of our optimal breathing techniques where we balance the nervous system. And be, just simply be. And be is all like the yoga nidra side of things, the rest and relaxation where you just be. Because like you said, we're in such a busy world these days, or if we've been through a traumatic life event, allowing the body and the mind to have some time to rest and recuperate is what I found hugely essential to my well-being, to my mental and physical well-being. So yeah, I just take a combination of things that I've retrained in during chemo and things that have helped me.
Yeah.
Because ultimately now it's about quality of life.
And so you built this business up. Clearly you're passionate about breathing, and clearly there's an awful lot of benefit or the opposite if you don't breathe right. And I suspect it's only going to get become a bigger opportunity for you. So that's seems like in some ways a blessing, a positive that's come out of this whole experience. Would you say that's the case?
Yeah, I think so. It's a difficult one, but it's
well, having your own business is not all.
No, and I've never had my own business before.
Yeah.
So,
okay,
that because I had no job when I was diagnosed. I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose by trying my own little business and trying to support others. And it would be a shame and a waste not to now help others. So, I support different, not just cancer patients, but, I've written this Breathing Through Cancer course.
Okay.
So that takes a combination of the different trainings that I've done, plus my own practices. So it combines, so I trained as a hypnotherapist as well. So I'm also a professional hypnotherapist. There are similarities with hypnotherapy and yoga nidra, but again, it's relaxation. Hypnotherapy is essentially relaxation plus positive suggestion with whatever personal goals people are working on. But that's something I've found really helpful.
Okay.
So I combine all of these things. They work well together.
Yeah. And personally, you've found it beneficial.
100%. I mean, I literally have no idea how I would be if I would even be here. The prognosis for someone with my cancer was like 3 to 5 years. So
So
I literally have no idea.
You can't prove that it's
of course not.
But you feel that it's definitely been a huge positive.
Yeah, I wish I'd known it before with asthma. I couldn't do the activities they used to, like even that I'm very much into paddle and racket sports these days, and I couldn't. I never played so much in the past because my asthma held me back. Yeah. Whereas now,
that's really interesting because, as I said before, it doesn't get talked about, and recognizing there's so many you could do with asthma, and then a lot of the benefits are unknown, in terms of cancer or other health issues. One thing that I wanted to touch upon was, so you filled in the online questionnaire on the LivedInsights website and encourage anyone with lived experience of whether it's cancer or any of the other topics to please fill in an online questionnaire. And one of the questions is about your mental health, going through cancer diagnosis, cancer treatment, is going to be really, really difficult. And one of the things that came out from the questionnaire was, with regard to mental health, is it has improved. And that's really interesting. Because a lot of people will say that it would have deteriorated, having to go through all of that. So to hear from someone whose mental health has improved as a result of their cancer journey, it's interesting, and I'd like you just touch upon that.
I suppose that wasn't probably the case right at the start with the shock and trauma, but again, I think if we can be a bit proactive with taking some responsibility or supporting ourselves, and I read lots of different books. There's lots of things on YouTube these days to try and help reframe things, mindset. Again, the hypnotherapy I think really helps with mental health. Stimulating my positive neural pathways like the gratitude practice, all these things to try and balance with the negative. I'm not in denial, though I have been told that I might be in denial, but I'll take that if I feel good at the moment. So, but offloading, I think it's important to acknowledge and offload the negative stuff. But then hopefully that creates space for the more positive, so to help improve mood and to improve mental health. So it's probably taken a bit of time. I've never done official resilience training in the past. I know that's quite popular these days, but I think until you've been through something traumatic, that is resilience training.
Absolutely, yeah.
In itself,
nothing like real experience to
exactly
make you
real
resilient.
lived insight.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. So, and in terms of your cancer situation at the moment, you mentioned you have 6 monthly checks, but are you under any treatment? Are you taking particular medication at the moment? No more chemo, haven't had that for a long time.
No, so I stopped my oral chemotherapy 1.5 years ago. That was quite personal choice. Obviously I discussed it with my oncologist. And things have been stable for a while, so I was playing a little bit of Russian roulette with myself, maybe, because no one knows. Oncologists didn't know. No one knows what might happen if you stop treatment. But anyway, my last scan which was just a few weeks ago, showed everything was stable. There's been no change, so I'm very, very, very relieved and grateful for that.
And that's been stable for a number of years now?
Yes, I think since 2020 there's been no changes.
Okay. And what has the oncologist said?
I am still on hormone treatment, by the way, so I am on monthly Zoladex and Letrozole. So I know lots of people with breast cancer will know what that is and might be on that. So I am still on hormone therapy, which has its own side effects and symptoms. And yeah, so, well, it's just still living scan to scan, essentially. No one knows.
Okay. But it's every 6 months. And do you allow yourself to, during that that period, to live as much as possible? As in, you can never forget about it, of course. But do you allow yourself to live without thinking about it constantly, or is it constantly there, every day?
I think it's always, I call it like my cancer cloud. The cancer cloud is always around. Sometimes it's a bit more over my head than other times. Maybe it's a bit further away, a bit more distant. But, and it's taken a long time, obviously it's coming up to 8 years living with it. It sounds strange to get used to it, doesn't it? That's not the right phrase, but I do try to live as normally, whatever that is, my new normal. In between scans, but then there's always a stark reminder once scan time comes up again. Is it that
build up?
It's that
the scans come in and then you've got the wait for the results. That period is
exactly. So it feels like can have a breather. Sorry for the use of that, but I've got a few months where I can continue as doing what I can, and then back to scan time again. So it's a stop-start, I guess.
Yeah. And so it's been stable for 5 years. You've come off the chemo, but there's no changes. You're trying to live as much as you can without thinking about it. Of course, it's always there, and you call it the cancer cloud. And presumably, if you get, any kind of, anything at all, you become what is...
Yeah. And I have had that a few times where I think, oh goodness, what does this mean? If I haven't had any for a while, but I did have a period when I think it was experiencing some headaches or experiencing some pains in the body.
And you become paranoid.
And exactly. Anything now, it's almost like 0 to 100. It's immediately, oh, is it or is it not something cancer related? I don't know if you can ever go back to a normal. It's just a pain, and that we can still experience headaches and normal pains, aches and pains.
Yeah.
Getting older, thankfully. There's different reasons.
Yeah. Well, certainly in my case, I always is it age or is it cancer? Which one? But okay. So I think something touched upon earlier, I think it's really important to get across. Two things. Firstly, when someone gets a cancer diagnosis, it doesn't immediately mean they're going to die. Mm-hmm. So many different types of cancer, so many different treatments, so many different situations. Yet still, for most people, when they get that diagnosis, that's their first immediate reaction. Secondly, when people are told stage 4, terminal, palliative care, immediately they think that's it, that's the end. Yet you're living proof that's not the case. More and more we see people living for years. I know several people who a similar diagnosis and they're doing all sorts and living life, and kind of, each year goes by and it's kind of, it does, you've got to be aware of, just because not to make an assumption. I think that's the main thing. Don't make an assumption. Try to understand, and I think that's obviously really important for the person going through it, but for everybody else to have that better understanding, that more knowledge. And I think just talking about it, sharing experiences, sharing the insights, improving that overall knowledge, education, it's got to be, it's obviously a good thing, and can make a huge difference. So I just want to say a massive thank you for sharing your experiences, your insights, your situation. Obviously, I wish you all the best, both in terms of the business. Can you just breathe in, balance, be? Breathe, balance, be.
www.breathebalanceb.com.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And I'll certainly be thinking more and checking out.
I've got a free good breath guide if anyone wants to download that. Just
we might
go to my website,
sort of add that.
And that'll have the breathing basics and a bit more information in there for people. So
we'll make sure you get that across to me, and we'll do what's necessary to put that on. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, I've had my own cancer journey, and I think, to hear someone else's, particularly with the situation you're in, it's definitely interesting, but it's also really insightful and inspiring. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make sure that I'll look out for you at the gym and say hello, and we'll catch up. Thanks again so much, Louisa.
Thank you.
And I hope you found that really interesting, insightful. So check out Louisa's website, Instagram, etc. We'll make sure that's on there. Check out the other podcasts and look out for the future ones. So thank you, and thank you again, Louisa.
Thanks very much.